This is the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite version 3. This is a shoe I initially purchased with the idea of using it for my sort of threshold workouts and in general half marathon to marathon training. So I was not intending to use it as a racing shoe, but then I tried it and it completely blew my mind. It's fast, it's extremely comfortable, it's bouncy, it sort of rolls me forward, and it's cheap. So let's dive into it. Before anything else, how did it feel during warm-ups and cool-downs? This is very important for me, as I said in the last video, because I just start running right from my doorstep. I don't bring with me another pair of shoes for warm-up and then cool-down. So both the warm-up and the cool-down felt much more comfortable than in other racing shoes that I typically use for threshold workouts, like the Vaporfly. Faster too, like 10 to 15 seconds faster than usually, sort of similar to the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo that I reviewed last week. Although I would say for me, the Deviate is more comfortable than the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo. So I typically do a 5-kilometer warm-up and then 5K cool-down. And normally during both the warm-up and the cool-down, I would feel like stopping about halfway for a drink, but also because I don't feel comfortable, especially in the Vaporflies. But that did not happen in the Deviate. So it's definitely a shoe I feel very comfortable to jog in, warm up, cool down. So that means it's less of a mental barrier when I have a hard workout on the calendar. And it's a shoe I wouldn't mind at all walking to the start line of a race in and then walking back to the hotel after the race. It's really very comfortable, so I don't need to take another pair of shoes with me. In this sense, it's quite similar to the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, but I would say the Puma Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is like one level up in terms of comfort. When it comes to the stability of the shoe, I would say the Deviate is a tad more unstable than the Vaporfly when it comes to taking turns, but it didn't feel unstable at all. It was okay, it was much more stable and felt safer than the Edge Tokyo. In the stability test, the Deviate didn't do that bad. I could feel that the foam wanted to propel me up and a bit forward every time I was sort of wobbling a little bit. So this is a test you can easily do in a shop when you're trying a new shoe. In fact, I would recommend that. There's quite a bit of outsole in the shoe, so that should provide good durability and good grip. The grip is arguably better than the Vaporfly and other shoes I can compare with, but I've not been able to test it on wet surfaces yet, so I cannot confirm that. But in general, the Puma grip is known for its quality, so I have no doubt about that. We've got a decent amount of outsole here, there, strategically located to cover all the necessary spots. There's a small cutout here, presumably to save some weight and also to show the carbon plate. That means in terms of durability, it looks like the outsole is going to be enough to sort of outlive the foam losing its properties. So that should not be, the outsole should not be the limiting factor in terms of durability. The upper, the Ultra Weave upper, is a bit too plasticky for me. I prefer a woven mesh like in the Alphafly, Vaporfly, or even in the Edge Tokyo. I find it much more breathable, softer, and more respectful on my toenails. So in this sense, the Deviate upper could be improved. The toe box is rather narrow. In fact, this is one of the reasons I usually stay away from Puma shoes, because they tend to be a bit narrow. At least that's what I feel. But I have to say, in this case, it was true to size for me, and I indeed stayed with my normal size. Now, I'm a bit conscious and fearful during the run that my toes hit the upper when running, and would cause pain and discomfort. But to be completely honest with you, in the 4 workouts I've done so far, I haven't had any major issue, at least not more than with other shoes. The laces are very simple, classic, but effective. I made a single knot just out of the box and it did not undo in 23 kilometers of the workout, so no problem. In terms of weight, the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 is obviously a lightweight racing shoe, but perhaps not extremely light compared to other racing shoes. In fact, they claim for it to weigh 194 grams in UK size 8. In my EU 46 or UK 11 size, it weighs exactly 223 grams. So that's about 35 grams more than the Edge Tokyo with one size less. That's quite a big difference, in fact. The midsole is a single density foam called Nitro Foam Elite, which is nitrogen injected foam. It feels bouncy and soft. It sort of sinks down and returns the energy, which is a feeling I've never had in any other shoe. Not to that extent. I don't know how long it's gonna last. Perhaps it's gonna disappear after just a few workouts. Now you can indeed feel the softness of the foam when walking or when jogging slowly, but like any other racing shoe, the foam becomes harder as soon as you put more power in, like during a race. Now this is normal. This is how racing shoes work, and the foam in general works. It is soft like a I don't know, like a mattress, for instance. If you lay down slowly, it adapts to your body and so on. So it's soft, but if you smash it, if you hit it, it becomes harder. So that's how the foams return energy when running fast. So this is normal. And by the way, when you try a shoe in the shop, it's okay to try to sense the softness of the foam by walking around in the shop, but you should also try it by sort of hammering your foot down into the ground and trying to sense the bounce in similar conditions to when you run fast. It feels very different from walking in general. In the bounciness test, the Deviate came out pretty much at the same level as the Edge Tokyo, perhaps a tad less, but very similar. But I would have to repeat the test several times and measure it better to make it more scientific. So let's say it was very, very similar. Perhaps what I noticed is that it wanted me to hop more forwards than the Edge, something I also clearly felt in the Alphafly. The drop from heel to toe is 8 millimeters, so I would say it is okay for me. That's basically what I'm used to. But it's worth mentioning that in the new version called DG Tokyo, I believe, the drop has now become 10 millimeters. So what happened in my workouts? I did exactly the same workouts as I did in Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, 2 threshold workouts, because I'm preparing the Copenhagen half marathon, and 1 VO2 max workout, and it's also the same kind of workouts I used to do in the Vaporfly like a month and a half ago. So I'll put the numbers on the screen, but let's say compared to the same workouts in the Vaporfly, the heart rate was 3 beats per minute lower in the Deviate. The cadence was 3 stride per minute more or higher. With the same stride length, but less vertical oscillation, and that's because in the Vaporfly I was trying to extend my stride length by really pushing into the ground, which is the only way I found in the Vaporfly to sort of run faster, put in a lot of energy. However, in the Deviate I didn't have to put in that much energy, and I could very much feel that the rocker was helping me to roll forward and sort of collect my leg, my foot behind me, and then helping with the knee drive, so lifting my knee in front. I don't know, it felt all the time like I was sort of running downhill, which I was not, obviously. So that's quite a nice feeling, which I haven't had in any other shoe so far, at least not to that extent. However, compared to the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, the numbers were very similar heart rate, cadence and stride length. Only I felt the ride in the Deviate was smoother and more enjoyable and more comfortable. Now during the VO2 max workout, again I'll put the numbers on the screen, but clearly compared to the Vaporfly, the numbers in the Deviate are better, but that might be because the Vaporfly is not new anymore, and also because perhaps I am in better shape now. So let's focus rather on comparing with the Edge Tokyo. My heart rate was significantly higher in the Deviate, but that's because I did the session, the VO2 max session, in significantly worse weather conditions. It was very hot. It was in the middle of a heat wave. It's extremely hot today. Real field temperature is 45 degrees Celsius. Very humid. In fact, you can see the sky is sort of milky. That's because of the humidity. I'm already completely drenched before even starting. But also because I was consciously trying to extend my stride length by experimenting with some ideas. So what I achieved was indeed a similar stride length to the Metaspeed, but with much slower cadence, so a lot more focus on the stride length, but also with a lot more energy spent. But perhaps the most important comparison is when I look at my stride visually. I don't know, it looks much more natural and smoother in the edge, but again, perhaps that's because of my little experiment with the Deviate. It's worth mentioning that both after the VO2 max and after the threshold workouts, the next day I felt not as tired as I usually feel, like in the Vaporflies. My legs were quite okay, so in this sense it's pretty similar to how I felt after my workouts in the Edge Tokyo, although perhaps a little bit more so in the Deviate. So what are my likes and dislikes? Well, I like the soft foam and the bounciness of it. That's a shoe I really feel comfortable running my warm-up and cool-downs in, and also even long runs or tempo runs. I like this feeling of rolling forward and helping me to collect and lift my leg. I like the grip and I like the price. I mean, it's much cheaper than most other carbon-plated racing shoes. I don't really like this sort of plasticky upper. It's okay, but could be improved. And I also don't really like the weight of it. It's rather on the heavy side for a carbon-plated racing shoe. But really, that's all. Nothing else I don't like. So in general, it seems better than the Vaporfly 3 for me, at least. Very similar to the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, although probably more comfortable than the Edge and gentler on my toes and toenails. Noticeably heavier though. In fact, I bought it with the idea of using it for my threshold workout and training sessions, and not for racing. But now I will seriously consider using it for a half marathon. Not sure whether it would be in the Copenhagen half marathon or perhaps in the next one. That should be the Sofia half marathon. And yeah, I'm looking forward to testing more shoes with nitrogen infused midsole. I like the bounciness and the softness of it. And finally, I wish the upper was a bit softer. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to follow me in the lead up to Copenhagen, Sofia and Valencia half marathon, and then the Valencia marathon later this year. Perhaps even Benidorm half marathon. I'll have to see. I'll be posting not only my training and the race vlogs, but I also like to post some running tips and reflections when I visit these places. And in the meantime, of course, if you run around, remember to look around. Cheers.